So I will wait for the cue. Good morning, and I'm Don Levy, and I am a consultant. I have a small firm called Smithbrook Farm, working with a lot of entertainment, media, and technology companies. And then I also spend some of my time down at USC with the Entertainment Technology Center. It's a think tank and research center that really looks at the future of content production, distribution, and consumption. So it is my pleasure to be here with you this morning. And we're going to have what I hope you'll find to be a very interesting conversation. Conversation really about not so much the digital consumer. I think we can all agree that that is something that we can, we don't need the adjective. It's now our customer. This is the audience. I'd like to contribute to the discussion. This, at least in the latter part, will be a pretty interactive group, because that's really what this is all about. It's not just pushing entertainment into the marketplace, but it's a true dialogue. So, on the panel today, what I'll do is I'll give a very brief introduction of each of the panelists, and then they will all give a little, maybe another 30 seconds to a minute of detail. But John Ruby is the CEO of Fathom, runs the entertainment sector, and I think Facebook is certainly a welcome participant on this panel, because Facebook in and of itself is perhaps entertainment. It's also a very powerful marketing platform, and it's creating its own entertainment distribution. Hani Patel is with DirecTV and AT&T. And I think, again, noting that this is a really interesting merger, first of all, the union of began. Kayvon is ICM, and really is looking at both entertainment talent, as well as emerging tools and technologies and platforms to better connect and leverage talent and brands. And then Dan Deglau is at the end a longtime game developer veteran, as well as founder of the the Academy of Interactive.
I'm president of the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Foundation.
Great. So let's run up the panel, starting with Dan, to just give a little bit more detail so you know who actually is here, and perhaps also add what your kind of priority is at the moment.
Well, basically, I'm a guy who went to school, got a playwriting degree, and then fell into the video game business at its very beginning. And that has been what defined the tale. So I've worked all the way from the first console wars against Atari, where I was director of game design for Intellivision, up to the present day, where I'm advising international publishers on their digital strategy, and worked on a wide variety of sports and film-based games, most particularly in the meantime.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kayvon Paimani. For the last several years, we've been thinking about elements of corp dev, biz dev, certainly the digital space for us as an agency, and then our venture partnerships and venture capital model. I actually come out of the startup space. I had founded one in high school that did okay, and then went from there into kind of the corporate side of entertainment, held senior exec roles at Disney, Warner, and Netflix, spanning content acquisitions and direct-to-consumer methodologies and a whole host of other things. So excited to hear from my colleagues.
Hi, I'm Hanny Patel. I'm with DirecTV, now part of the AT&T family, as you all heard. My primary area of responsibility at DirecTV is I work on the revenue and marketing side, so I work with the customer base. And prior to that, I spent 19 years at Showtime Network, so I've really been on the content side.
Or digital outlets or films or whatever it might be, using the power of the platform and the power of mobile to drive those successes predictably. Thanks.
Good morning. My name's John Ruby. I'm CEO of Enjoy the Content Together. So it's kind of the coming full circle that
What might be possible. I can remember, well, probably 15 years ago, having to convince journalists that we would someday actually be watching movies on our computers. People were saying it's a terrible experience, let alone on a mobile device. Now, I think this is accepted, but along the way, we have also the industry has been learning a lot about the audience and the customer in much, I think, deeper and more complete ways. And we're kind of coming of age right now. So I'll throw it out to the panel, but what are we discovering? John began to tee it up with, as much as we are in a digital individual screen world, there's a desire for that community. But when you have all of the interactions that go on, say, a Facebook, or I'm sure there's a lot of knowledge at DirecTV about what people are watching, when they're watching, how they're consuming content. I'd like to just explore that amongst all of us.
I'll take it first and say that we work regularly with Facebook and DirecTV in particular, in that, we offered the Grateful Dead this summer, which was live on DirecTV as well as live in our theaters over the 4th of July weekend. Facebook is a regular marketing partner of that, and I think that the really big opportunity over the last 20 years, Don, is the fact that niche audience is the audience. At one time everyone was out there chasing network scale and everything, and the reality is that that more often than not, it's niches that that in essence is the engine that drives consumption. And the more compelling the content, the deeper the conversation comes. Whether that's conversation is online or is the person in the seat next to you.
I would say from my perspective, and I appreciate whoever had the phone ringing as a prop, because it was a perfect lead into what I wanted to say, which is mobile. And so, for us, it's the story now is mobile, and more mobile. And so you're going to hear me say that numerous times in the next hour. If you look at the stats and the way people are consuming content, it has really shifted entirely to that platform. So whereas I may have even, as much as even a year ago or 2 years ago, sat in front of you and said, the shift is upon us, we need to put that in the past tense and say that it has already happened, right? We look at consumption up 367% in the past 2 years in terms of consumption on mobile. For every 5 hours that you spend with media, you're consuming 7 hours of media. That is through the stacking of mobile on top of whatever else it is that you're doing. For us, we get 4 billion video views a day. 75% of those views are on mobile. And I can continue to inundate with you with stats that show that there's this tremendous volume and massive, massive audiences consuming everything from what we initially thought were short form videos, because it's a small screen and connectivity and so on, but it's really transitioning into also long form video, right? And looking at episodes, if you will, pre-linear releases of an episode or something like that. So truly, in terms of the change and shift in consumption, for us, it is a platform shift.
And for us at DirecTV, we're dealing with more traditional content forms such as movies, and so the best experience, I think, from a movie perspective is obviously to go to a theater and see it, but that's not always feasible for people. So we're looking at ways to bring more and more of that content to the home screen. And the home screen, as you guys know, while some of them are getting smaller, a lot of them are getting bigger and bigger, and the quality is getting better and better. And so we want to continue to make sure we're bringing the best quality signal to our customers so they can watch the movies in their homes in the most, high definition format, as well as we launched 4K last year, so customers can see movies in stunning 4K on DirecTV. And so we're always looking to not only bring the breadth of content that people are looking for from a theatrical type experience into the home, but offer the same type of quality in that viewing experience in their homes that they may not have the opportunity to go to the movie theater. And that's kind of from a consumer perspective. You asked what we're seeing, and we do see a lot of people who over-index in terms of going to the theaters as well as watching at home, but there's a group of people that really focus their efforts on watching at home, and there's this group of people that are called parents with small kids who can't afford to spend $150 every weekend to get a babysitter or go to the movies, dinner, and et cetera, and that's a bigger and bigger growing part of that home VOD audience that we're seeing.
I tend to think of this in kind of two market sides, right? I think of the market of the one and the market of the many. And there really is a divergence that's pretty clear when you start to think about our ecosystem in the entertainment media space and layer in the technology space on top of that, and how those two universes of the one and the many are sometimes in conflict, but oftentimes are riding on the same set of data and information. So we tend to think a lot about what does it mean for the individual audience member who at various points in the day is the audience of one and the audience of many, meaning they're watching the thing, the movie, the stuff that Hollywood has been for decades very good at doing, which is creating an intense amount of demand for one product, as opposed to the YouTube generation and the millennial set that is very UGC focused, which is intensely focused on the personal expression of themselves, as well as intensely focused on the consumption of individualized content, meaning the things they care about in that second. So it's, I want to reiterate the points my colleagues are making, because it is fascinating to see not just the incredible shift that's happening on platforms like Facebook, where 75%, as you just heard, of the video content is consumed mobilely, but just in general, 30% of all video consumption. That's every video that we watch, whether it's television, on mobile devices, wherever it may be. A full 30% is now viewed through mobile devices, and that has some pretty stunning implications, right? There's implications of personalization and messaging that are possible. There's certainly implications of form factor. If you think about it, on video views 30%, on mobile devices, viewing of anything on mobile devices tends to be vertical, right? And that's a pretty interesting and dynamic shift as well, where the landscape view, which is what we're used to thinking about in entertainment, that kind of 16:9 or 2:5:1 kind of amorphic widescreen, which is the gold standard of a cinematic experience, doesn't translate really well in a vertical format, right? And so you're seeing different expressions of content engaged at different levels as people consume them for, frankly, different reasons. And that's the part that's been the hardest thing to parse, which is, when are people watching this? What frame of mind are they in? Why are they watching it? Is it to kill 5 minutes? Is it to immerse themselves for 2 hours? Is it to talk about the latest Star Wars trailer that came out yesterday and is blowing people's minds? Like, what is it? What's happening? And it's hard as an industry for us to get our arms around it singularly. So you do need this kind of collection of brains from disparate places and disparate industries to help figure, or at least triangulate down, what the heck it means to even talk about an audience.
And I think for creatives in the interactive space, we've gone from having a very restricted dialogue with our audience to having a constant flow of information, and that creates both opportunities and problems. For many years in the console games business, we would look at reaction to games, we'd have focus groups, but that was our interaction with the audience. When we built the Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, we had a very popular film series to work from, but we were still saying, okay, how do we translate that to an interactive experience? Now with games, particularly on mobile, we have a constant flow of data, constant flow of information, which begs the question of, hey, we got what we always wanted, all this feedback, now what do you do with it? And the problem, it goes back to, I went to college with a friend who would come into the dining hall every morning and go, I got this new shirt. Do you like it? Do you like it? If you like my shirt, then I'll wear it. But if you don't like it, I'll go back up to my room and I'll change it. And it drove everybody nuts. The fact that he was so dependent upon our opinion and had no opinion of his own. I'm still remembering it here years later. There is a temptation and a trap for creatives to do the same thing, because we both have to listen to the data, respond to it, take advantage of it, the way you would with any opportunity to have insights with your audience. But you also have to, at the same time, maintain an artistic vision, so you don't become that creative who's asking everybody if they like your shirt.
At the same time, does that give you a chance to make some adjustments? Because certainly in games, especially in, say, the freemium model, where things will be changed multiple times a day sometimes.
In fact, we are changing constantly based on the data we receive, because a lot of it is very clearly factual. People are playing to this point in the game and then they stop playing, right? That's easy. Okay, I did something wrong here, I better go fix it. Ironically, the battle we face most often with the creative community, for those of us who end up advising and leading teams, is actually the opposite problem. It's counterintuitive. You have people so intent upon defending an original vision that when the writing is on the wall of very clear input, they will hesitate to respond to it. But I've seen both problems rear their very ugly heads.
When it comes to actual sort of content consumption, because the form factor is changing, the time is changing, even traditional television is changing. Late night television being a particularly good example, perhaps, where the shows in many respects are designed for that, video clip, as opposed to one long linear show. What are we seeing both and I think it's interesting to have the range of voices here on the panel, because there's certainly something happening on Facebook. There's certainly some insight coming down the pipe at a DirecTV, and then how talent are beginning to think about the content they create, or even the segments that get produced. So, we have a range of views here. Sharon, do you want to kick it off?
I mean, sure. In terms of delivering sort of what people are expecting, and if be it from talent or content producers, or from us delivering what you expect from the experience on the platform, I'd say I'll split it into two parts. Like from a talent perspective, I think what you're seeing are more products coming out of Facebook that address it, right? So if you think of the mission statement of the company, it is to connect people to the people that matter to them, the relevant people in their lives. And if you expand that out to the media landscape, you say also to connect people to the brands and to the public figures that are relevant to their lives. And so in what ways can the product aid in that connection? One is, for example, a product came out, I'd say almost about a year and a half ago at this point, called Mentions, which is a tool that allows for public figures, celebrities, artists, and what have you, to post more easily to their constituency across numerous different platforms. It also allows them now to live stream and so on. So I would say keep an eye open for tools that will continue to allow that sort of connection between people and their fans in a very relevant way via the Facebook platform, and allow fans to comment in real time as they're live streaming and so on and so forth. And then in terms of our tools that we have that we give to the people to use, when I think about brands and people who create content, shows, film producers, and what have you, there are certain things like, for example, an audience insight tool, whereby if you uploaded your audience or had your own audience of people because you had a robust following on Facebook, you could analyze and dissect that audience to find out what they really do want, what their likes are, where do they cross over with other interests and likes of competitive and or non-competitive shows or films, understand them better, and so then talk to them more in the language of their interests and their behaviors and their likes.
I guess I'll jump in and say that we use Facebook regularly, along with other tools, to measure, how many followers, if you will, a certain artist has. And kind of like Don, we don't tell artists what to do. We're basically aggregating, enabling, distributing content in a long form. So we're kind of trusting the mission and the creative vision of the content to know exactly what their audience is looking for, but Facebook gives us an outside yardstick, if you will, to determine what the possible impact and what the core fans might think about this, as well as commercial tools. I mean, the one that comes to my mind is the promoted post, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically a tool that enables you as a marketer to utilize in partnership with an artist. It makes it easy for an artist to put the word out to their fan base that they're involved in something and that they're behind it. You know, whereas if you didn't have that tool and you left it entirely to the artist, well, they're not artists because they're technically inclined generally. So,
You know, I'll say that I'll tackle this from a slightly different perspective, which is an obvious and yet complex statement, right? It's the best of times and worst of times for people who are trying to get messages out. And if you're a brand or a personality, there are so many ways for you to actually directly engage the person who is ultimately your fan, right? The person that is the lifeblood of what you do as a creator. The lifeblood is who you are as a studio. The flip side of that is there's also infinitely more distraction that is in front of that human being. And so what's lost in a lot of these conversations, because we tend to think only on the digital side, is that, you know, as human beings, we're actually not just digital people, we're also physical beings. And there is a mix of ways in which we react to a world. And I think as marketers of creativity, or as salesmen of creativity, or as distributors of creativity, which is ultimately who we are on the business side of entertainment, if we lose sight of the fact that the human being on the other side of the fence is not only on Facebook for 7 hours a day, or reading posts from friends and messages through Line and WhatsApp, or seeing the billboard that they drive by, or bumping into a star at Hollywood and Vine and remembering something about them. Like, if you forget the fact that there are all of these various things that work together in an ecosystem to drive awareness, you actually run the risk of myopically attacking an audience through only one channel. And what that actually does for you is you kind of preference the audience you go after, right? And so I think I would throw in one word, which is, it is unbelievably amazing that the data is there for us to know what people like and are thinking about and use and consume in the moments that they do them. But equally, it's important for us to understand that as humans, we engage with each other socially in a myriad of ways, and it's our job as entertainment marketers and distributors to be in those conversations in as many organic ways as possible. And that word, by the way, organic, which is overused, is critical, right? The idea that it's something that's invited in as opposed to forced upon. So I'll leave it at that.
That's right. Hey, what are you seeing in terms of audience consumption? How are people, frankly, watching what could be considered a more traditional broadcast, but I'm sure you also have some new services coming down the pike that may reflect some changing tastes and behaviors?
Yeah, so I think from the consumer behavior, there's so many more options that we're talking about here, right? There's not just the traditional competition as distributors that we've felt in the past, which is another distributor that you can choose from to get your home entertainment service, but now there are all these online streaming services. There's the Netflix of the world, there's the Hulus of the world. We're competing with, while we partner with Facebook for marketing, we're competing with Facebook for time for the customer to actually have in front of the television to watch their traditional television service. And so from the perspective of usage, we're not really seeing declines in viewership necessarily. We're seeing that people are doing more at the same time. Right? They're multitasking within the home and using mobile devices while they're watching their traditional television. But we're also seeing a lot of time-shifted viewing of content, right? So there's live viewing obviously that goes on, but people DVR programming, there's on-demand options that are available. So what's really kind of at the end of the day, what we're seeing is there's many, many more ways that there's convenience that's been added to the ability for a customer to watch their content. You no longer, I mean, it's been years since we had to sit at home and do appointment television. Now there's some shows that certainly warrant that, and people do still like that. And I think there's some shows, as we talk about, that you do want to see on your television versus a small screen. And so people are making trade-offs from those perspectives, but we're seeing just consumption happening on multiple devices, and we're seeing consumption happening in different ways at different times. And so, that's kind of the biggest changes that we're seeing in terms of consumption habits. And you know, on one hand, as I said, technology sometimes is competing with what our core business is, but it then also enhances our core business. So it's a partnership, and it's maybe a love-hate relationship a little bit in some ways.
And I think to build on that, in mobile games where we see people interacting with screens of different sizes, they may also go back to a traditional desktop to interact with the same property. Not only do we see different behaviors between different customers, but we see the same customer act very differently on different screens at different times of day. To go back to your image of the parent, during the day at work, they may be stealing a moment on a game while they're standing in line at the deli for lunch, or maybe even while they're at their desk. Later in the day, they may be doing 5 things at once, the kids are around and they're taking a brief moment. After the kids are asleep, they become a completely different kind of game player, but it may be the same or a different screen size, the same or a different device, or even a very different interface, because if a game migrates between touch screen and point and click, very often we're tempted to look at that as a trivial difference, but in fact it utterly changes how people interact with the product.
Can I make a quick comment? Because it just struck me as I'm sitting here listening to these really great comments and having this music blaring over us. There's really, it's actually part and parcel to like what we experience in our lives, right? We as humans are actually, and I'm going to come back to this point because technologists lose sight of human beings every once in a while, and I find myself doing that every once in a while as well. We're kind of conditioned to be distracted. Right. I mean, if you think about going through your daily lives, I mean, I do it too, right? Where my phone buzzes and I can't help myself but to pick it up and look at it, even though I know that something crazy hasn't happened, probably. Right. But that distraction, that element of defocus or unfocused mentalities as we view content or do anything in our lives is our constant struggle. Right. Because I think you make great points about the audience is different as they come to you through different medias. They're also just different than they were in the past, right? In the past, you had an entire generation who was conditioned to sit in front of their television and watch what was viewed to them on 3 channels. That's changed so dramatically that, you know, I think that consumer is gone forever, right? And the consumer that you have today is like I just was on this panel, where music is blaring, the sound goes up, and my focus just shifts because it's demanding my focus. And that idea of demanding your audience's focus is a very subtle nuance that we still haven't quite figured out what we need to do to make sure that we retain the audiences throughout what we're doing. And I'm curious to hear what my fellow panelists have to say about that issue.
Well, as you pointed out, to a large extent it is environmental. And that's part of what we offer in the cinemas is a completely focused experience where you do not have those distractions. And to kind of build on what Don says, gamers are extraordinary at what they do because, you know, they're always open to distraction. But we do an event for several years now for Sony PlayStation, where we take their show from E3, where they launch all their new games and everything, and we put that live in movie theaters. I think last year we had 75 of them, and it was so popular that the tickets went in less than an hour nationwide, and that there was a standby audience. So there were literally people that came without tickets, hoping that someone that had a ticket wouldn't show up, and so then they could go in, you know, like the Academy Awards or something like that. So I think that the whole sense of focus and environment is really important, and understand, you know, I think as everybody has said, understand who your audience is and what is the conversation with that audience, and also to format it to the screen and the environment that it's playing to.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about how do we engage the consumer, there's certain elements that we can create that are unique. And to expand on that, you know, if you look back at DirecTV's legacy as we were launched, we launched with NFL Sunday Ticket as being an exclusive property that you can only get on DirecTV. So that makes that kind of a must-have product for somebody who is into football and wants to watch all football on Sundays, right? And then we launched Audience Network, which is a proprietary network that is available only to DirecTV customers and now to AT&T Uverse customers, that has original programming, and it's dedicated to our customer base to bring them incremental value. And I think when you say understanding and knowing your customer, we do a lot. We have a great analytics team, and so we know what our customers are watching, what types of movies that they're interested in. And to bring it back to the creative community, as you were talking about, a couple of years ago, we started this program. We're bringing exclusive movies to our platform, to our customers, before they premiere in theaters. And this came about because I felt like there was a need, having spent my 19 years at Showtime, and the windowing strategy was set by the studios. A movie goes to the theater, and then 3 months later it goes to pay-per-view, and then it goes to HBO or Showtime or Starz, and every window was carved out, and there was very little opportunity to do anything outside of that. When I got to DirecTV, being on the other side, on the distributor side, I was working in that transactional window that came right after the theatrical window. And what we were seeing from a usage perspective, from looking at what our customers were doing, as well as from the content that was coming in, the movies were either making $100 million at the box office or more, or they were making less than 10. Then it was more making less than 5, making less than 2, making less than 1. The movies that are making less than $1 million were growing in quantity. However, the quality was still there, right? There's some great movies, but lots and lots of films, but they really, by the time they got through their theatrical run and came to VOD, there's no marketing support left to put behind them. And so there were these great films that were never really coming up to surface to see the light of day, that our customers were not getting exposed to because the marketing message wasn't behind them, because there were no funds left. And so I had this idea. I thought, you know, there's all these great movies that are never really getting to our customers. These great movies, when they get these independent films, when they launch and they go to theaters, they'll be in maybe 10 screens. We're a 20 million customer platform. Our customers are all across the US. They don't necessarily all live in Chicago and LA and New York, where even if they wanted to see these films in theaters, that they could see them. So we took this opportunity to say, could we figure out a way with independent films, maybe have a little bit more flexibility in the windows? We saw a customer need, that there were these movies that were great. Now we see that our customer base is watching movies and is growing in terms of not only their usage of movies, but the number of people that were coming into the buying universe. And could we bring something unique to them, a la Sunday Ticket or Audience Network, but do it on the movies platform? And so we started working with studios and bringing independent films to DirecTV, an exclusive 30-day window prior to them going into the theatrical window. So now it's a win-win situation. We have our customers who normally wouldn't have gotten a chance to see that movie, would not have heard about it, getting exclusive content from us. And then the benefit to the filmmaker is these movies weren't really getting the kind of marketing support that they could be, and we're helping to enhance that life of that movie, going through the life cycle of the movie. So I think it's this combination of, like we said, knowing who our customers are, what are they watching, what do they want, and then finding a need and an opportunity in the marketplace and trying to bring the two together to kind of create a beneficial relationship across the board.
And then lastly, sort of where we fit into this whole ecosystem, I think it's a really great mix of people on the panel, because you don't consume the content on Facebook, right? As of right now, you're going somewhere else and you're consuming that long form content, 30 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it might be. And so I look at it as a supply chain, which is just separating discovery from consumption, right? We spent a lot of time in fragmented, talking about the fragmentation, the distraction. Perfect, though. The phone is the perfect thing to ring at this time. The distraction between different things, and being able to watch it either on a big 20-foot screen or in your house 3 months later or whatever it might be. You're not going to consume it anywhere if you don't know about it. And so what we do is we assist in the part of this supply chain, which is discovery that precedes consumption. And so, again, with the amount of time spent on mobile, with 20% of that time as Facebook on mobile, how can we, as you scroll through with your thumb, and we say the thumb is the new remote control, make you stop on a piece of video and watch a 30-second enticing clip to have you then go consume on a 55-inch panel in your living room or on a 20-foot screen in a movie theater. We became so fixated on this separation between discovery and consumption and understanding how people discovered things that we actually commissioned Millward Brown to do a study for us to analyze the behavior of consumption, or rather discovery, of entertainment content. Some things are really obvious. Music is mostly consumed digitally. Music is mostly discovered digitally, right? So you're probably streaming it or getting it on iTunes, and you're probably finding out about it through a digital source. That seems to be a really sort of sound hypothesis, and it was tested to be true. When you look at TV and film, we found that 50% of discovery was online and 50% of discovery was on TV, right? So, but right now, to Hanny's point, most of the consumption is on a 55-inch screen in your living room. And so what we say is aid in the discovery on the platforms where people are discovering content. So if it's 50% digital and 50% TV, place your bets half on digital and half on TV. Make sure that they find out about this great show that you're producing or great film, and then send them to consume wherever it is that you would like them to consume, in their living room, on a 20-foot screen, on their computer, wherever it might be. And so it's the whole ecosystem, I think, that matters.
I'm so glad you brought up discovery, because that was actually going to be the next question or next thread, because with this proliferation of content and choices and media on which to consume it, how people do discover it and how much help they want, because even on a Facebook, it's still subject to your feed, although, and promotions. Most powerful motivator for people, I imagine, still is word of mouth and the recommendation of either people they personally know or people who have really fallen into that category of influencer whose opinions they respect. So in addition to or along with Facebook, what are customers relying on, or are they right now just lost? And this is frankly one of the opportunity areas that exist today to help them find all of this great content.
Do you mean, when you say customers, do you mean our customers or the actual audience?
The actual audience.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I think that
it's everything.
With if we look at games as one example, if you look at the App Store in Google Play, you have hundreds of thousands of apps. So we got used to a world in which if you produce something of quality across any form of creative medium, it would get noticed. Now Shakespeare could write Hamlet, put it out in the App Store without marketing, without support, without promotion. The best he would do is having his mother call him and say, "That's nice, dear." That's the best you get for Hamlet. So quality alone is not enough. You have to have some means of getting people to know, recognize, and discover your title. And that is a very, very shocking change to the creative community.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about that discovery and how do we get that word out, it's the films I was talking about that come exclusively to DirecTV before theaters, they've never, it's kind of like that app that Shakespeare might have put out. Nobody's heard of this film. The first time you're hearing about it is when DirecTV starts talking about it. And so how do we rise above and break through all of the other content that's out there and all the other choices? I mean, traditionally, we've always said TV sells TV, and I think that still works, right? So I think the television is the best place to sell television content. But that being said, discovery is happening across the board, and we're using more and more digital media. We're using Facebook, we're using online digital buys. We're in these other places that customers are to try to communicate to them about the content that we have, where they are in their spare time, so that we can have them discover the content outside of the platform, and then, as Sharon said, come back and watch it on DirecTV. But I think that's key, is like, no matter what, like at the end of the day, if we don't put marketing support behind it, if we don't get that means of discovery out there, we can have the greatest content available and no one will know about it. And that's kind of what was happening with some of these films to begin with, and that's kind of why we're trying to bring them to the surface.
So there's two frames of mind to think about. There's the frame of mind where the consumer, and let's think about it just from the audience standpoint, right? There's a frame of mind where the audience is seeking out the things that they want, right? And that's a very different frame of mind, right? This is my personal interests. I love snowboarding. I want to see a fail video. I want to watch Batman. These are intent-driven economies, which, by the way, the entertainment industry has been built on, right? These intent-driven economies. Then there's the other side of it, which is the economy that's driven, at least from a business standpoint, through serendipity, right? This is the part of the industry that's changed dramatically, right? The idea of serendipity, of walking into Blockbuster and seeing the movie you didn't know existed, now it's incumbent on service providers like DirecTV to put it in front of you in a way that's enticing, right? The serendipity of walking into Best Buy and bumping into something, the serendipity of that physical location, which is really, really the most powerful thing that a physical location offers you, has been replaced by things that are much more digitally focused and much more personalized. So, you know, as marketers, we have to kind of parse that veil, right? The veil of making it something that's engaging because it's the thing you like and want, right? So think about how Marvel has been so incredible at cultivating its fan base through a decade plus now of films that had no guarantee of succeeding, if you want to look at it just from the film universe. Then there's a serendipity of things that nobody ever knew existed before, right? The first time a documentary comes online, or the very first time a video game that's independently produced, it's incredibly hard to shout into the void and get noticed just through serendipity. And so there are these mindsets you have to think about in your consumer, and they're completely different methodologies of getting in front of someone that wants you to be in front of them and getting in front of someone that could care less whether you exist.
John, for discovery, in some respects, it seems that you're also using interest groups to surface and identify audiences. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, and online communities and tastemakers and things like that. And I think that the other thing that we're doing is you look at the ecosystem, you look at all the different windows that content plays. What we do at Fathom in the cinema events is create a deep immersive experience, a very deep connection between the audience and the content, such that not only does it help us market this individual event, but it becomes a firestorm when you look at other windows. And probably a great example of that was we did an event with The Fault in Our Stars, and we offered not only the first view of that particular title, but we offered a live Q&A, which included the author, who's got 65 million followers on YouTube and Facebook, and you know, the musicians from the soundtrack and everything, and social media exploded over the weekend. In other words, people went. I think we had we sold out 700 theaters. We did $2.3 million or something. But the point is that social media exploded. Fox had such a big week with that through Sunday that this delicate film won the week, knocked Maleficent out of #1. Nobody was expecting that, but it's really about looking at that connection with your audience, creating a conversation with them, and in particular, enabling a conversation amongst themselves such that they reach out to their friends, because I think somebody said it, that you pay more attention to what your friend says. Oh, you got to check this out. And then you will definitely check that out. You know, you'll give it a shot at least once or twice. So that's where I think you look at the depth of that connection, and that's how, in essence, all these players in the ecosystem, you know, play nicely in the sandbox.
Yeah. You know, we tend to start to talk a lot about core versus persuadable audiences, which I think is a lot of what we've been talking about, this sort of intent-driven behavior, which is probably a core audience behavior, versus a persuadable, the serendipitous moment, to use your words, to say to persuade them to come into the fold. And so one example where I think we had a tremendous effect on both of those audiences in driving the behaviors was with Straight Outta Compton with Universal this summer, which was, you know, if you're my age, you know NWA, and you know you're into that music and so on. But you know, there is a huge audience out of there that was not growing up at that time and was not aware of the music at that time and may not be the biggest Cube or Dre fan at that time. And so you have a persuadable audience that you might want to bring in because it was a great story versus a core that was a huge fan of the music genre or the people and really were going to see it regardless of that. And so what we did is worked with them on segmenting the audience out into 3 groups, which was general market, African American, and US Hispanic audiences, and marketing to each group with unique creative that we developed for each of the 3 groups based on who they were and attributes that they had. We delivered 96% of that video on mobile. In particular, that you know that African American and US Hispanic audiences over-index on mobile consumption as compared to general market. We talked to 45 million people. We had 30% incremental reach to TV, and we had 100 million video views on the platform. There were other implementations that we did with Beats by Dre and other things through Cube's Instagram account as well, but just to give you an idea of the impact and the scale that we had. Going into that weekend, and Universal sort of was like on the fence about that film. They thought of it potentially as, it could be a hit, and it turned out to be the sleeper hit of the summer, which was tracking at 40 million going into opening weekend all the way through, and then opened at 60, right? And so what we did is, to that core audience of African American and US Hispanic, we eventized the film. We made it feel as though if you did not go this opening weekend, you were gonna miss out on like a social event, right? It's like true definition of FOMO. And then to the general market audiences, they were persuadable. We had a massive increase in the intent to view. The intent amongst African American and US Hispanic was already high going in. Eventizing it and saying, but you have to go on opening weekend was the key differentiator. And then taking the general market audience and saying, hey, this is a really great story and a great narrative. Even if this isn't your favorite group, you're probably gonna wanna go. And bringing them in to have them also attend to exceed expectations by 50% on opening weekend.
It's kind of a lead in, exceeding expectations. And there's a case where your customer in that case was the studio, so you certainly exceeded their expectations. But is it fair to say that in a number of these cases, we're also seeing the audience's expectations exceeded? A richer, deeper, more engaged experience that goes beyond what they had previously come to expect?
The short answer
Yes.
is yes.
Yes.
Right? The much more nuanced answer is it depends on what you mean, right? Because the expectation bar actually continues to go up.
Okay.
So if you think about the expectation of our audience 20 years ago, I would submit that most audience members wouldn't have expected to be able to directly talk to the cast members. Right? Whereas now, the kind of AMA format of a cast member or a Comic-Con panel is just part of the table stakes of launching a big event film. And I think that idea of engagement is an ever rising bar.
Yeah, I think that's really where I was going. Is the audience keeps getting ever more sophisticated, and likewise their expectations rise. So the challenge for everybody is to create products and services that not only meet those expectations but exceed them and surprise them, maybe.
Yeah, and I think we're living in this world of instant access. We want things when we want them. We're in a world of getting more and more personalized messages delivered to us in this age of digital marketing. And so people are seeing ads that are targeted to them because I was on this site and I looked at this pair of shoes and now I'm looking at my bank site and now I see those shoes and now I should go buy them because God, why didn't I get them before? So it's like this timeliness as well as this personalization, and I think the better connection that we can make with the content and targeting a particular audience member that will be interested in that content, kind of to what you were saying, and then building upon that, and the more we can reach them with the type of communication that they're looking for, as well as the message and the content, the better off each project is going to be. And I think that that's kind of the key these days. Yeah. It's like we can't just do mass marketing emails anymore. We can't just do blanket campaigns. It's like people are expecting us to talk to them as individuals in terms of, I expect you kind of to understand what I'm looking for and target me with that message, because I don't have time for anything that I'm not interested in.
In fact, I think one of the things we're accustomed to across all media is seeing production values used as a barrier to entry. So over time, within a stable technology, games, films, TV shows would up the game of how much money was put into the production to make their productions look qualitatively superior to what others could do. If other people couldn't match those budgets, they were pushed out of contention. I think we're seeing the same thing happen now gradually in many forms of media with interactivity and connection. What we're taught traditionally in creating stories is we have to create an emotional connection between the characters and the viewer. If it's an intellectual connection, it's broken in a moment. We're trying to create an emotional connection. Well, now marketers and distributors and creatives are all trying to create not only an emotional connection for the characters and thus for the story, but also an emotional connection to the process of acquiring and experiencing the story.
That's a great point. I'd sum it up in one word: special. Right? Is it special? And that's I think what was really amazing about the example of the movie Straight Outta Compton was that it made the movie actually feel like a special film, right? It was wrapped in this sense of historical relevance and nostalgia and authenticity of storytelling, authenticity of the music, civil movements. It made it much more about something that was unique and worth your time. And so I think that's actually the biggest thing that's changed for all of us, is that less and less things feel special, right? If 20 years ago it was special that George Clooney walked in front of you, today it probably isn't as much if you live in certain parts of the U.S., right? And that's part and parcel to kind of the always on, 24 on demand access to information and imagery and video and all the things that we like as consumers. But it's also a mechanism that comes out of all of the things that take our attention away from those things that we used to find special, right? I have little kids, and I'm constantly reminded about things that are special, right? Because like when I go to Small World, I'm like, oh my God, that song is killing me. It's amazing for my 4-year-old, right? It is the most mind-blowing experience for her, and I love that because it reminds me, at least personally, like things are actually special if you frame them in the right context and you position them in such a way that it matters beyond just, you should buy this, which by the way is important, right? The kind of contextualization of commerce. But that idea of uniqueness and specialness, I think, is the thing that we're all chasing, right? And we're all chasing this way in which we can make either it feel special or actually make it special, which is the best form of marketing you could possibly have.
We're going to open the floor in just a moment to questions, but I want to ask each of the panelists, you're all smart, you all know your markets and product really, really well, but over the last year or so, what has anything surprised you in your business, especially how has the audience surprised you?
I mean, for me, so I guess I'll end where I started, which is this shift to mobile. Not necessarily that we didn't know that mobile was going to be a very important device in our lives and was going to change the way in which we consumed media. I think it was the speed at which the shift occurred. And even at the most senior levels, my companies, people have been in the tech industry for quite some time and also in entertainment through various incarnations. And everybody has been surprised. If it took radio 38 years to arrive at scale, or TV 14 years to reach 50 million people, it took 7 years for mobile to be at 1.4 billion people, right? And so that speed of the transition, I think, surprised us all, and we all had to adapt. If you think of the time at which the Facebook IPO was happening, the headline in the news at that time was, Facebook is not mobile. And it was like this negative headline that was coinciding beautifully with our IPO. And so you think of where we've come in that time frame and where we've all come as consumers. I think that shift and the speed of that shift was surprising and exciting.
I would say it's the scale of our audience. In the last 2 years, we've gone from 2 million paid to 2.5 million paid, and we're not through 2015, but we're over 3 million this year alone. The number of events, the diversity of the events, I think we had 27 events in October, and one night we had 4 events. Now they're not all playing in the same theater complexes, but as technology scales, and that enables us to deliver more forms of different content to identifiable specific audiences and create conversations with them. And So yeah, it's
So the surprise is possibility.
yeah, because we're just getting started.
Yeah.
For me, I would say it's the shift and the change in what is considered marketing. 5 years ago, marketing was those usual tactics that you're used to, whether you're getting a direct mail piece or seeing a television ad or kind of your very traditional things. Now, it's, as a marketer, my job isn't just to market. I have to think about what the UI looks like, and that's my first and foremost tool for marketing to a customer. And so now we've become technology experts along with being marketers, and we have to understand the technical how this works and then make it appear on the screen, because the screen is the thing that the people go to the most, and that's where they're getting their messages. So it's that shift in kind of mindset from how do we reach the customer, but also from a knowledge base and just an understanding of that area of the business, and having to become much more technical as we go through and progress as delivering content. And it's not just delivering content, it's now delivering a technology that goes along with the content. And like I said at the beginning, the way people are watching and making sure that we're delivering the best and highest quality of content. All of that kind of falls into the realm of, we're no longer, part of my title is product marketing. So it's understanding the product and having an idea of how that product is going to help drive the engagement with our product.
It's interesting to think about that user experience as a critical
Absolutely.
component or barrier.
I think that I'll do an inverse comment, and that is, I'm still surprised that the games industry does not recognize what Facebook clearly recognizes, and that is the potential of the African American, the Hispanic marketplace. And I have heard every lame excuse I can think of from publishers over the years for reasons why not to place more attention there. I love your story. It's a great example of doing it right. We still pay more attention to Iberian, Castilian Spanish than we do to the Spanish of the New World, which is completely illogical given the demographics we have. So I am surprised that that opportunity has not been seized, and I'm surprised that those of us who are trying to seize it keep getting as much pushback as we do.
Kevon, anything surprise you before we open it up to
The Mets.
questions?
I'll leave it at that. No, my colleagues have made excellent
Okay.
points. Yeah.
I'd like to turn it over to you. Are there some questions on the floor? Please.
For Ms. Masali, as Facebook becomes more aggressive with marketing and with marketers, how do you keep the balance between, Facebook started as a way for friends to reconnect with each other, find each other, whatever. How do you balance that? Do you even think about that? Or is that kind of like, no, not your purview?
No, it's something we talk about all the time, right? You'll hear Mark and Chris Cox, who's our VP of product that's been with him since the early days, talk about experiences that delight people, and that if it's not delightful, and if you are not delighted, and we can keep on using versions of that word, as you experience Facebook, then it's not the platform that we want to build. So the people come first. People-based marketing is how we describe our marketing efforts, and all the products that we roll out are all about people. So what you'll see are two things. One is obviously the algorithm is presenting content that is relevant to you, based on your behaviors, based on your social graph, based on your interests. Your newsfeed is personalized to you, and it minimizes the content that is irrelevant to you and serves you up things that really make sense to you. When an advertiser goes to promote something on the platform, there's something called a relevance score. If their relevance score is very low to their target audience, it won't deliver. It won't do well. So basically, if it's irrelevant to 18 to 34-year-old women because of the content or the creative or whatever it might be, it's actually not going to perform very well. So we're motivating you to do things that perform very well. And I think, if we look out over the next 1 or 2 years, I'd say we've sort of touched upon this. Personalization truly is at the core of what is sort of effective content and marketing. And so I think what we're doing also, not just us, but all of these big media platforms are encouraging people to be more intelligent with their creative, as I mentioned, even with Compton, coming up with different creative for the right segments so that it feels personalized and relevant, such that the experience continues to remain delightful.
Your social media network doesn't know. Do you worry about them
I think they're all complements to each other. I mean, we always say, it's funny, people come to campus and they will say, that company that begins with a G. I'm like, well, I use Google. I mean, it's not like, something that we don't use. I think when we talk about the supply chain and the ecosystem and discovery versus intent, I think everybody has, let's say their place. And I think that if you're a marketer based on their relevance to what you're trying to do and potentially their size and scope, then you weight your efforts and activities based on who can deliver the most to what you're trying to accomplish.
Question in the back.
Hi. The question is also directed to you, Sharon. I have a brand called Love TV that's, and we utilize Facebook a lot to engage our audience. And one of the things that we have done over the last 9 months is we have really been using your hyper-targeted opportunity to purchase and attract a quality audience. And we have over 70,000 in our audience right now. What has been like this huge query for our team is that audience isn't seeing the content. And we have a super, we know that it's a demo that, it's female millennials, it's really highly targeted to content that they really like. And so that's the question. I'd love, any insights that you could give us because we keep struggling with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we could certainly go in through a deep diagnostic of what's going on, in your page, but I would say in general, you'd look at the various posts and you can look at the analytics and use those page analytics to your benefit. Which posts are achieving the highest reach? What types of posts are achieving the highest reach? Which days do you have the highest reach? I bet you video is performing better than pictures for you, for example. Can you up the frequency at certain days and times such that you can reach the most people with the most relevant content that is getting the highest number of engagement? You can look at your video insights to say what percentage of the video are they watching? Are there certain videos where they are watching more, and are there characteristics that you could repeat in the next piece of content such that it gets more views and more shares and sort of capitalizes on the ecosystem? And so you can grow your base in that respect. And then from there, we've all referred to the fact that you could at some point also invest in promoting above and beyond who your constituency is and how do you find new people who'd be interested in your content. So I would say looking at your insights and analytics first and then thinking about expanding out second.
Another question? I will ask one then. What gets in your way? Where are you hitting a wall right now? In terms of either customer engagement, customer participation, product, the kind of one thing that you could just get over this one hump, it would produce something interesting. What frustrates you?
Well, I'll say in the game side, the greatest barrier we face is that we now have a dysfunctional publishing system whereby if you are doing something where you can distribute it yourself and you have the capability to distribute it yourself, it is often not economical to go through the publishers. Very much the same situation that many book authors see. But raising money for independent games is very, very hard. So fundraising for those for whom the traditional system is illogical, I think is the greatest, most frustrating thing, because you end up resorting to angel investment, and that ends up being a very long and tortured process.
I would say it's what we talked about probably at the beginning of the panel. It's the fact that the media environment is noisy, it's distracting, it's cluttered, and so it makes it very difficult to make a real connection to get, in essence, the core of your marketing message, that this content will truly delight the person when they engage. So
I think it's just the proliferation of options for customers. There's so much out there now and so many good options that just trying to keep customers within our ecosystem is becoming more of a challenge. But I think it's also, like I said, it can on the flip side, be used to our advantage. So I think that there's pros and cons there, but that probably is just the proliferation of options. And so it just forces us to do better and provide, a solution that you can't get elsewhere.
And for us, I think what enables success, let's say, is working together really early, coming to us, when you first had the idea and bring all the relevant people to the table. And the other thing is coming up with like a holistic KPI. Like, what really is going to make this show successful? Yeah. What is that benchmark or this film successful? And not having different KPIs, key performance indicators, for different platforms. Like, for example, I want to achieve X amount of video views on this platform, and I want to have Y amount of engagements on another, and so on and so forth. Holistically, regardless of what the partner that you're working with, what measures success for you, and be succinct across that, and then we'll all win together and track towards that success metric.
The flip side of that is coming unprepared, and that's a
I don't wanna
barrier.
say it, but yeah.
It's a barrier to success if you don't plan it out and think it through. And people are somewhat random sometimes.
I would definitely second, content by its very nature seems to be out there and waiting for a better deal to come in, and generally has no understanding of how they compromise their overall success, regardless of the option they choose. But just by continuing to look at other options, the time to your execution or your event date, if you will, gets shorter. The likelihood of your success goes down by the same proportion. So,
Before I throw to a final question, I just want to check if there are any other questions from the floor. All right, then, as a closing thought, either something we didn't cover or your hope for, say, the next 12 to 18 months.
I guess I'll start. My hope for the next 12 to 18 months is almost always the same, and that is that we are going through some form of interactivity, and I think all of us here in this panel represent different forms of interaction between connecting stories and people, that we will find additional new ways, not just to communicate with people, not just to connect with them, but to actually affect their quality of life. Every one of us has a film, a movie, a TV series we've seen where it changes how we think about our own lives because of that world that we experienced vicariously through the story. All of us in Interactive are just beginning to scratch the surface of how we can do that, and that is both a function of creative and it's a function of how publishing and distribution reach out and touch the audience as well, in concert with and cooperation with creative. I think we have so much more we can do, so my message is always the same. In the next 12 to 18 months, I hope we do it better and better and better, because the opportunity of working in the entertainment business is we do have the chance to touch people's lives.
Well said.
Kayvon?
Yes, I think my hope is just a continued expansion and integration of the ecosystem, right? Where I think it's been pretty remarkable to watch how direct marketing strategies that had worked for decades in consumer products have migrated over to our industry, where methodologies on social media in figuring out what kind of conversations matter have migrated into our industry. And I'd love to continue to see a further alignment of things that relate to consumer devices, to non-intent driven signaling that oftentimes is talked about in the world of Internet of Things, to location-specific experiences like the awesome work that the guys at Fathom are doing, where it's experiential as well as relevant as well as targeted. And I'm looking forward to that, because that means then we're all going to see something that could potentially touch us, right? We're all going to see something that could potentially shift our worldview in a slightly different way, and that's a pretty exciting thing.
For me, in the next 12 to 18 months, what I'd like to see, my hope is that we continue to kind of change the way that the film industry thinks about the distribution model, and continue to expand on the titles that we're picking up, but really make that change in the mindset of filmmakers and even theater owners, hopefully at some point in time in the distribution process, and seeing that we really can be an incremental value to the life cycle of a movie, and then take that and be able to secure films that really do connect on an emotion, to your point, an emotional level with our customers. And then also that then kind of combines with all the technology that we've been talking about, and using all of those mediums that are out there for us to continue to get that message out there. So it's kind of like starting from the beginning of the thought process and taking it through to the end to ultimately make sure we're getting the right content into our customers' homes.
For me, what I'm excited about and look forward to seeing in the next few years is this increased personalization. So we've talked a lot about personalization of messaging and targeting. You're starting to see products that are coming off of our platform where it's these very personalized canvas-like experiences that are immersive, featuring video and text and photo all in one. And then personalization in terms of the way in which you consume. You know, you're starting to be able to your point, the windows are shrinking and or merging. Can you watch something on your phone or on a big screen or in your living room at your choice, at your time? And then lastly, the ultimate sort of personalization as we see it now is, virtual reality, right? In the next 12 to 18 months, you're gonna have an Oculus, all of you, I'm sure, and you're gonna be watching, TV shows or videos or movies in this personalized experience that is immersive and fully encompassing. And what does that experience look like? And how does it change the way in which we consume and market?
So I'm really excited about all the things that everybody else is excited about, and the fact that part of that ecosystem is people coming out to digital performing arts centers, also called movie theaters, where we can work with all of these platforms together to delight audiences that are gathered in the room together, that can look each other in the eye, feel each other's energy, and experience that content in a very special way. So thank you.
John, Sharon, Annie, Kayvon, Dan, thank you very, very much. And thank you.